live from our studios in Kingstown, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. It's your favorite Thursday night show, Up Late with Sehon Marshall. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the host of tonight's show, Sehon Marshall.
Good evening, good Sunday evening to you, and welcome to this very special edition of your favorite program, Up Late with Sehon Marshall. It is not a Thursday evening at 9 p.m., but instead it's a Sunday evening and it's 6:30 p.m. And so you may be asking yourself, what's happening? Why do we have an Up Late with Sehon Marshall going on now? Well, as I promoted earlier today, the events that took place, transpired in the region just yesterday, prompted me to do today's program. I contacted the head of mission of the Embassy of the Bolivarian Republic here in St. Vincent and Grenadines to be a guest on the program, but he indicated to me that he had a number of engagements because of the fluidity of the situation in Venezuela, and so he would be unable to accommodate me this afternoon. However, he did indicate that on another occasion he will. So he wanted me to indicate when I'll be able to accommodate him, and we can do a program specifically getting the perspective of the head of mission or the representative of the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela here. So, look, I was in Venezuela a few months ago, and so I'm proudly wearing this t-shirt tonight, which is different than how I usually dress for Up Late, because honestly, I'm in solidarity with Venezuela, with the people of Venezuela. And this evening's program is just to give context, and hopefully at the end of it all, you would make up your mind and determine how you feel regarding what is happening, or what you can draw your own conclusions rather regarding the situation in Venezuela. All right? So just bear with me this evening. Let me see who I have logged on. Let's see who these people are. Let me see. How do I get it? I'm usually able to see the comments. Yes, there they are. I'm usually able to see the comments and see who the individuals who are logged on the program, so I can say hi and so forth. But today, unfortunately, I am without my director, so I am doing all of this on my own. So please bear with me. But I promise you, it is going to be an interesting program. Now, I want us to look at what is happening in Venezuela from the perspective of international law. And then we can delve into how things are unfolding and where things may go next, possibly based on what we are hearing. Interestingly, just a few minutes ago, while I was getting ready to actually start the program, I saw a statement from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of St. Vincent and Grenadines, General Fitzgerald Bramble, addressing the issue of Venezuela. But I was unable to at the time, because it was so late by that time, to get that clip, so I can play that clip for you. But the government of St. Vincent and Grenadines has made a statement, and we'll talk about that statement as well. But let me, before I start, get deep into the current situation, give a bit of a background, or at least lay the context for what we are going to be discussing this evening. Because what has happened from all reports is that the government of the United States of America, as a matter of fact, let me play in their own words what has happened. So I'm not going to tell you what has happened. I'm going to let the President of the US tell you what has happened. So let's Let's do that. Let's do that.
In the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. It's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. We are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about.
All right. So there you have it. Let me make sure the audio is good. Okay, good. So the audio is good. All right. So what we've just heard from the President of the United States is that the military forces of the US conducted an operation in Venezuela. They bombed areas of Venezuela, created mass destruction in Venezuela. From all reports, civilians were killed in Venezuela. And at the end of it all, the kidnapping of the head of state of Venezuela and his wife resulted, and they were transported back to the United States. So the questions I guess we want to ask is whether or not a head of state can break the laws of another country while in their country, and whether or not the head of state can be arrested in his country by another country and transported to that country. But we have to go back a bit and look at this from the standpoint of something that we hear all the time, international law. And what is the idea of international law? Now, after the First World War, in 1918 or thereabout, a group of countries came together and decided, listen, we can't have this type of fighting going on. And those countries, including the US, started what was referred to as the League of Nations. And that was the first attempt at a global international organization, right? A community of nations. Interestingly, the US never joined the League of Nations. They were never a member. And the US has always been seen as one of the more powerful countries, but they didn't join. And then later on, you had key members of the League, like Germany, Italy, and so forth, Japan, who left the League because they had committed aggression and they were constantly being chastised by other members of the League, and so they left. And the League fell apart. Now, the idea of the League of Nations in 1918 was to ensure that there was not a Second World War. But guess what? There was a Second World War. And so, at the end of the Second World War, they came up with another brilliant idea. And this time, they came up with the idea of an organization called the United Nations, which was all-inclusive. Today, of course, you know that the United Nations has 192, 93 members, with some associate members and so forth, observer nations and so on, right? Now, so we have the United Nations now. And the United Nations was formed with certain purposes and principles about it. And to discuss that, I want us to go to the Charter of the United Nations, which identifies and determines and lays out the reason for this organization. And in the preamble, it says, "We the peoples of the United Nations determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind, and to reaffirm faith in the fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small, and to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom." It goes on to say, "And for these ends, to practice tolerance and to live together in peace with one another as good neighbors, and to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, and to ensure, by the acceptance of principles and the institutions of methods, that armed force shall not be used save in the common interest, and to employ international and to employ sorry yes and to employ international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all peoples." So that the idea was to prevent wars and to create a world where people were living together in harmony and in peace. Now, this charter has a number of articles. And if you go to Article 1.1, it talks about the purposes. Article 1 talks about the purposes and the principles of the United Nations. Article 1.1 says to maintain international peace and security. And to that end, to take effective collective measures to take collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace, and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, and to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustments or settlements of international disputes or situations which might lead to a breach of the peace. And so, if you listen closely, there is constant reference to the idea of peace. The United Nations was set up to ensure that we minimize threats to peace. We want to live in peaceful coexistence with each other. Now, we go to Article 2. And Article 2 says, now 2.1 is important because it kind of puts into perspective the idea of one country going into another. The organization and its members, in pursuit of the purposes stated in Article 1, shall act in accordance with the following principles. 1. The organization is based on the principle of sovereign equality of all its members. In other words, each country is its own country and they're equal. So regardless to whether you're big or you're small, you're a sovereign country. You have your own laws, your own leadership and so forth, and you are equal regardless to your size and your economy and so forth. That's what Article 2.1 says. Article 2.2 says, all members, in order to ensure to all of them the rights and benefits resulting from membership, shall fulfill in good faith the obligations assumed by them in accordance with the present charter. And I'm reading from the charter, we are at Article 2. And this is just to set the background, because it is important for us to realize that Venezuela is not a city of the United States. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not a village of Canada or England. Now, here's one that I want you to pay attention to. There are two articles that I want you to pay attention to very, very closely, and these are the next two. Article 2.3, which states, all members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. Remember, we were looking at Article 1 and there was a lot of reference to the word peace, peace, peace. Article 2.3 says that all members that are sovereign and equal, should seek to settle their disputes in peaceful means, in a manner that doesn't threaten the peace and the security and the justice internationally. But here's what 4 says. Remember I tell you, I want you to pay attention to two articles, Article 2.3 and 2.4. 2.4 says, all members shall refrain, and we know what the word refrain means. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of this United Nations. So, according to the Charter, that all members of the United Nations abide by the rules that govern the organization, all members should refrain from not just force. So, to use force is one thing, but you shouldn't even threaten anybody to use force. That's what Article 2.4 says. And you shouldn't use this force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. Now, later on in the program, you will understand when we talk about the political independence, because as you heard on the clip, there are certain plans that have already been floated regarding Venezuela. Now, the questions we ask ourselves are whether or not what happened Saturday morning where people were asleep, when it was dark, according to President Trump, where areas of a sovereign country were bombed by another, whether it violates international law. And from where I stand, as someone who studied international law, as someone who practiced multilateral diplomacy, the actions clearly violated international law. And you don't have to take my word for it. If you turn on to US television, you will find a number of congressmen and women, a number of senators, Bernie Sanders, Zoran Mamdani, Mayor of New York City, and others, speaking explicitly to this violation of international law. You see, there are people who are dancing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Oh, there's this idea that the previous administration was cozy with the Venezuelan government. And people have been posting, strange enough, oh, they're glad that Maduro gone and Ralph is next. Well, Ralph is not in power. Ralph is not in charge. But that's how political some individuals have already started to make it. But let me ask you a question. This year, when the current administration rolls out its citizenship by investment program, and the US deems that the individuals getting these passports are terrorists, you see how they like to throw around the words terrorists, narco-terrorists, this terrorist, that terrorist. When they deem that these individuals are terrorists and are threatening the peace and security of the US, and they decide to come and bomb Kingston, and bomb Annisville, and bomb Camden Park, and kidnap Dr. Friday and his wife, I hope you all will be cheering just as much, because you don't understand what a threat like this means. All we have as small states, all we have to protect us is international law. That's all we have. No. Since that happened, I was reliably informed that the CARICOM heads of government met on Saturday, yesterday, the 3rd. And I'm told there were 5 leaders, 4 leaders and an ambassador present at that meeting of the CARICOM heads. 5 countries present. You know which country was absent? You know one of the countries that was absent from the CARICOM heads yesterday morning? St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent and the Grenadines was absent. Now, I would think that as someone who has just come in, may not have a full grasp of all of the things at play, our Prime Minister, Dr. Godwin Friday, would want to ensure that he's present at that meeting so that he can get an idea of what is going on. He can have the experience of a Mayor Motley and others to explain to him, well, these are the dynamics at play. But our Prime Minister was absent. And then, coming out of that, the Bureau of the heads of government of CARICOM issued a statement. And this is what the statement from CARICOM says. I actually had it to put up, but the format is a little different. And like I said, I don't have my director, so I have to be doing all of this, right? So let me do that CARICOM statement. Yes. It said, the Bureau of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia, convened a Saturday, 3rd January 2026, convened on following U.S. military action in Venezuela. The Caribbean community is firmly committed to the fundamental principles of international law and multilateralism enshrined in the UN Charter, including sovereignty and territorial integrity of states and respect for human dignity. The region reiterates its call for peaceful dialogue through diplomatic channels to ensure Venezuela's stability, good governance, democracy, and prosperity for the people of Venezuela. CARICOM remains ready to support all such efforts in a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. The Bureau of the Heads of Government of CARICOM ensures that every effort is being taken, that every effort is being taken to ensure that the safety and security of citizens of the region. The Bureau will continue to monitor the multifaceted impact of this evolving situation and the implications for economic activity within the community, particularly air travel. And that was a statement from the Bureau of Heads of Government of CARICOM. Now, there are 3 members on the Bureau, right? I believe in some areas they call it the Troika. You have the outgoing, the current, and the incoming forming a group, a core group. But the meeting of the heads yesterday, St. Vincent wasn't present. Now, it's interesting that as CARICOM gave that statement, this was the response of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago to those events. She said, early this morning, Saturday, 3rd January 2026, the United States commenced military operations within the territory of Venezuela. Trinidad and Tobago is not is in capital letters, a participant in any of these ongoing military operations. Trinidad and Tobago continues to maintain peaceful relations with the people of Venezuela. And that was the Prime Minister's statement that she issued. That's it. That's it. Now, interestingly, the Secretary of State of the United States, and that's their foreign minister, had already gone on national TV and indicated that the countries in the region that have given them active public support and cooperation are Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic. Those four names were called as countries providing active public support in their efforts regarding Venezuela. Could that be the reason why you couldn't find more than 5 countries at the heads of government meetings Saturday morning? Could it be the reason why the statement is so weak? Now let's go back to our statement. According to the Honorable Fitzgerald Bramble, St. Vincent is assessing. We are assessing. We have no position on the violation of international law. We have no position on the violation of the territorial integrity of Venezuela and its political independence. We have no position on the use of force against an independent country. We have no position against the taking, illegally I might add, of a leader of a country by force by another country. Compare that with the fact that the International Criminal Court has indicted and has indictments against Benjamin Netanyahu. But he's flying about the place. You know where? Just weekend, Benjamin was in Florida. They did not have to send helicopters and planes to bomb Israel to arrest someone who's wanted by the International Criminal Court, an organ of the United Nations. He was right there. But Benjamin comes, he drives from Florida, he sips with the President of the United States, and he leaves. But Maduro, who's in his country, in his home, they go in the dead of night when people are sleeping, kill off a bunch of people, and kidnaps the sitting leader, the sitting head of state of an independent country. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines has nothing to say about any of that. According to our foreign minister, we are monitoring. Well, I remember when I was going to secondary school, you used to have people who used to have monitor badge. I guess St. Vincent wants the badge of monitor. Because we can't do nothing else but monitor. We can't say nothing else but monitor. We are the regional monitors. We look, we see what's happening, and we go back and we tell somebody, well, as a matter of fact, there isn't even a commentary on what is happening. He said he has spoken to the ambassador in Venezuela, His Excellency Garrett Bino. Garrett says things are bad down there, but everybody is in the mission is safe, and no one from St. Vincent, no national has reached out with anything. But they're safe. So you hear how CARICOM respond. We hear how Kamala respond. Countries like Russia and China, North Korea, Iran have all come out against the actions of the US in Venezuela. Here's what the EU says. The EU says they call for restraint by all actors to avoid escalation and to ensure a peaceful solution to the crisis. What do you mean you call for restraint? One country go and invade another country. What do you mean when you say you call for restraint? What do you mean? Who should exercise restraint exactly? Who? Because ain't nobody from Venezuela is in the US. There is no one from Venezuela on US territory. There's no one from Venezuela pointing missiles and blockading Florida. So when you say you call for restraint by all actors, exactly what do you mean? That's the EU, eh? These are the people who, according to them, are the champions of the rules-based order. You see one country committing aggression against another. And there was a build-up of that. Bombing boats in international waters and so forth. The EU recalls that under all circumstances, the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be upheld. Must be upheld. But you have the president of France, Mr. Macron, already saying, yeah. The people of Venezuela are relieved now. But you have a violation of the territorial integrity of a member state of the UN by another one. And you're saying in your statement that under all circumstances, the principles of international law and the UN Charter must be upheld. But they were violated at 2 a.m. Saturday morning. A number of violations occurred. Now, that is the same EU. That is the same EU that will run to talk about Russia and Putin. Eh? It is the same EU that will be ready to talk about Putin's aggression in Ukraine. But they have nothing to say with the US. And they have even less to say with Israel. Listen to the position of the Prime Minister of the UK.
Have you spoken to Donald Trump about what's happened in Venezuela?
No, I haven't, and it's obviously a fast-moving situation, and we need to establish all the facts. What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation, and as you'd expect, we're focusing on British nationals in Venezuela and working very closely with our embassy. And so I will want to talk to the President, I will want to talk to allies, but at the moment, I think we need to establish the facts. I think President Trump is doing a press conference later, so hopefully more information will come out then.
What is clear, though, which the White House has said, is that America carried out strikes on Venezuela and captured their leader, Maduro. Some politicians in this country have already condemned that. Do you?
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law. But I think at this stage, fast-moving situation, let's establish the facts and take it from there. And
just lastly, for people who might have family there or the small number of Brits in Venezuela, there are some there, it might be a small number, but of course people will be very concerned. What would their advice be?
Yeah, there's about 500 there in Venezuela, and we're working with the embassy to make sure that they are well looked after, safeguarded, and get appropriate advice. So we're working at pace with the embassy on that. It is a small number, but it's an important number. It is about 500, and so that's what we're doing there.
Donald Trump came on TV and said, America, the US military went in and did beautifully and they captured whoever, Maduro. You saw pictures. Hold on. I don't know what's going on with some people.
One holding either arm, 3 behind, and something like a dozen more surrounding with people, 10 yards in front, clearing a path clearly, and there will be security in all of this, getting close to the person who is accused, being filmed there by what look like drug enforcement agents. You can see two individuals with DEA on their backs filming, it looks to me, with iPhones. So presumably in due course we get the pictures of that as he or she disappear behind the building. We're getting pictures again of them heading towards a building. That's what it looks like. Slowly, deliberately. Their hands look from here as if they are handcuffed. The way his legs are moving, it would appear to be that his or her legs, are chained also. Quite tall, taller than the agents by his side, and he's being taken in there to a building at Stewart International Airport. As I say, the plan from here on in is to transport him, Nicolas Maduro, president of Venezuela. The plan is to take him to the Metropolitan Detention Center. That looks to me like a hangar he's been taken into. And you can tell the security agents are relatively relaxed now that they have him inside, standing, watching him. There's military, armed members of the military, clearly drug enforcement agents.
Now, you have the president of the US having a press conference telling you that the military went in and they took Maduro and his wife. You have images, videos showing you Maduro coming up the plane, Maduro handcuffed. A journalist is asking the Prime Minister of Great Britain, an independent sovereign country, about it. And he says, we have to get all the facts. I have to speak to President Trump to get all the facts. To get what facts? To get to. She says, the White House has said, the White House has said, and we've seen it, we've heard it, that this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. And Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of an independent superpower, nuclear power, is too afraid to condemn or to say anything about the violation of international law by the United States. Everybody else, all the journalists, the world over, everybody else has already gotten the facts because they've heard it from the president himself in the media. They've seen the videos. But not Keir, not Sir Starmer. That is kind of like the leadership we have here now. The leadership that can't say there was a violation of international law. The regional monitor. You have head boy and you have monitor. St. Vincent needs to have on the monitor badge. Because that's all we could do. Monitor. We can't speak about international law and the violation of international law. No. We had a monitor. We had a monitor. And then Trump says this. The president of America says this. Where are we?
Run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about.
It has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. the US, again, Sir Keir Starmer, is the US allowed to run another country? You invade them, you kidnap the head of state, and then you're going to run the country until you decide because you can't have. And for those of you, the clip's going to come fast and furious now because we do have a lot of time. It's only an hour we have. And for those of you who think this is about democracy, for those of you who think this is about democracy, for those of you who think this is about democracy, why does Donald Trump want to run Venezuela? Because they don't want to hand it over, they say, he says, and the same thing happens. What is really the issue?
Oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take the oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy, very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
You want me to play it again? Let me play it again.
The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be a very important. This is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy, very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look. It was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year is going to be a great thing. And the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
You know, I hope so for the people of Venezuela. I hope so that they're the biggest beneficiaries. Because leading up to this, we already knew it was about the oil. And after the capture and the kidnapping of Maduro, you heard the president of the US saying, listen, we need to be surrounded by safe countries and energy. We need the energy. So we're going to take back the oil. The oil companies are going to go in and take back the oil. But it's Venezuela oil. You can't take back what is not yours. Now, in all of this was an opposition figure, Ms. Machado, who, oh my word, she was doing all the right things. She was kissing the ring. Her name wasn't on the last ballot, but she was an opposition figure. She was a part of the opposition party, and most people in Venezuela believe that she was the one pulling the strings behind the opposition, so that she would have been more of a figurehead type. Well, the would have been more of a figurehead type, and she would have been the real power in Venezuela. And so after the opposition lost, she I wouldn't say she went into hiding, but she used her time strategically to create alliances, of course, with the US. Don't forget that years ago, the US had recognized a man called Guaido, Juan Guaido, and failed to recognize Maduro as legitimate winner. And that just phased out. But to add some legitimacy to Ms. Machado, they gave her the Nobel Peace Prize. Everybody wanted to know, what? Who is this woman? Where she come from? How she win the Nobel Peace Prize? That's a joke, everybody said. Everybody said that was a joke. And then Ms. Machado went on to admit that, listen, this thing is for Donald Trump. This prize is for Donald Trump. And she loved Donald Trump. And she supported what Donald Trump was doing. She couldn't wait for Donald Trump and the US to go in and overthrow Maduro so that she could be the one in charge. She could be the one in charge. And she could bring in the oil company and give them their share, and lots of things going to happen. She publicly supported what Donald Trump and the US, Americans are doing against the government of a country. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago is on a record telling citizens of an independent Trinidad and Tobago, of a sovereign Trinidad and Tobago, to behave themselves and hush them out. She says, if anybody, the only body who could come and defend you and protect you and so forth in case of anything is America. So I'll hush all them out. Analysts are already talking about the revitalization of the Monroe Doctrine, as if in the minds of some that doctrine had gone anywhere. So Auntie Kamala in Trinidad is telling her citizens who voted for her, they didn't vote for Donald Trump. She's telling her citizens who voted for her, hey, all you hush all about and be for yourself, eh? All you walk up like Antigua and Dominica with all the visas, eh? And if anything happens, who going to protect we? Well, at the press conference, a journalist asked about Miss Machado. I asked Trump, well, where's Miss Machado? Where's she there? Have you had any contact with Miss Machado at all since the whole thing? And this is what the President Trump had to say.
The location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President,
do you have any hesitations about Machado?
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect to be the
Mr. President, is
leader.
it possible?
Aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President,
Do you have any hesitations about Machado?
Mr. President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect to be the
Mr. President,
leader.
is it
Kamala, you're a very nice woman. When President Trump turns around to Auntie Kamala and tells she, listen, girl, you're a nice woman, you know, but you don't have the respect or the support of Trinidad and Tobago. Where is Miss Machado? Where is she? Where is she? You know who's going to be sworn in as president of Venezuela tomorrow? The vice president. The current vice president under Maduro. And she's saying that, listen, Venezuela has one president. You need to return the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Now, you've seen other clips. Played plenty clips for you to get a sense of what is happening in case you weren't following. Many of you might have seen these clips already. But understand that one country says the leader of another country is corrupt and he's head of a gang and he's supplying drugs. The first country, the accusing country, has not provided any type of evidence whatsoever. None. But because they are powerful, they take their bombs, they take their planes, they take their boats, they take their missiles, they blockade the country, and they invade the country. And in the dead of night, they seize and kidnap the leader of the country and his wife and drag them back, as somebody put it, trafficked them. So you have kidnapping, human trafficking, and so forth, traffic them back to the US, where you are going to indict them on charges in the US. And it was a real circus, you know. You have agents like little boys on the iPhone. When we were having the campaign, and you had the unruly boss, what's his name again, Popcorn, and the others who came in, Chris Martin. You saw all the teenagers and so on with their cameras trying to take a little picture and so forth of Chris Martin and so forth. That was the kind of circus that we had yesterday. Well, last night. The elected leader, you have accused them of stealing the elections. It's just accusations. But you know who else was accused of trying to steal an election? Donald Trump. Calling the Georgia governor, listen man, we need to find some votes. You're accused now of rigging, gerrymandering states to get extra seats. You're accused of inciting riots on January 6th. The civil rights abuses of black people in the United States. The Hispanics are now feeling it. The Somalis are now feeling it. So, by that logic, can Kim Jong-un set up military to go in and swoop down onto the White House and bomb and thing and kidnap Trump and bring him back to North Korea for trial? I mean, what kind of world we living in? According to court documents, this guy was convicted of 32 different felonies. He was convicted in civil court of... How does that add legitimacy to a charter that speaks of sovereign equality? That St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that's 150 square miles, and America, that's how many thousand square miles, are the same in the eyes of the law. That Venezuela, with 22 million people, and America, with 300-something million people, are the same in the eyes of the law. Well, wait, 22 million, that's Taiwan, sorry. How? And where is the international system? Because that is why after 1918, when they set up the League of Nations, it failed because of the inability to enforce things and so forth. And when you have this new system where the bigger ones that are more powerful can do what they want, you know what they're saying now? Well, that means China can decide they will integrate Taiwan anytime soon. Because you big, you bad. Might is right. And therefore, we're supposed to leave Russia with Ukraine. Because if you want to do that in Venezuela, and Israel wants to completely destroy Gaza, then leave Russia and Ukraine and leave Taiwan and China. Leave China with Taiwan. But you're going to defend Israel and protect Netanyahu. You're going to invade Venezuela, kidnap and traffic the president and his wife. But then you're going to tell Putin to leave Ukraine alone. I don't get that. That sounds like the double standard. That sounds like hypocrisy. And where does that leave us in the region? Where does that leave us in the region? If Venezuela says that there is going to be a rebuttal and a retaliation, they may not be able to reach America. Where they can reach? And so I understand CARICOM's situation, because CARICOM now has to play the role of mediator, because this region is supposed to be a zone of peace. Never mind, Kamala say she ain't in this zone of peace fakery, because guess what? She thinks that America will come riding over the cavalry and save she. Kamala, you clearly don't know history, because all you need to do is read up on the issue of Georgia, the country that was part of the Russian Federation. when George Bush egged them on to get into a war with Russia. So you clearly hear me reading. You clearly hear me reading. And George Bush said, don't expect the cavalry to come riding over the mountain. And old people are say in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Old people does say in our country, friends are carry you. But then I bring you back. So you allow who you think could defend you to carry you. And I hope the expectation of them bringing you back don't disappoint you. Listen, I'm disappointed in the response of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We've never had such a weak, empty, and pointless response to an international dispute like this one. Never. Where all we do is monitoring. I saw someone who is a massive NDP supporter talking about where's CARICOM. Where's Friday? Where's Bramble? Where what CARICOM do? Friday was not even at the CARICOM meeting. But you're calling on CARICOM? You're calling, where's CARICOM? Where's Friday? Because St. Vincent and the Grenadines was not at the CARICOM heads meeting on Saturday morning. We're calling on CARICOM when St. Vincent and the Grenadines guy have a statement. CARICOM is only a group, you know. Where's St. Vincent and the Grenadines' position? What is our position on the violation of the sovereignty of Venezuela? What's our position on the violation of the political independence of Venezuela? What's our position? We will monitor. Just like Keir Starmer. Everybody see and heard what Donald Trump was saying. But not Keir Starmer. He waiting on the facts. So what Donald Trump said in the press conference, and what Marco Rubio said in the press conference, and what has been reported over and over, and the videos, those aren't facts. Not for Keir Starmer. Let me call Donald Trump first. And let me tell me what I'm supposed to say. Comrades, friends, viewers, the moments, the next few hours and days and weeks ahead are nervous ones. Because we don't know what's next. And then you hear Donald Trump saying, we're leaving the vice president, you know, but if she doesn't do what we wanted, I'm paraphrasing here, if she doesn't do what we wanted to do, then we may have to go back in again. Again, the threat of force against international law. So you do what we want, or we come and run your country. And creating significant instability in our region known as a zone of peace. Tomorrow, the leader of the opposition of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, will be hosting a press conference. And I would hear, I'm sure, I was his press secretary, I am sure I will hear a position of the opposition of this country on what is going on in Venezuela. Not a monitoring situation. We're not a part of the seismic unit. We're not part of the seismic unit. We're monitoring. We need to have a call to action. We need to say where St. Vincent stands. We need to, as a country, a small island developing state that is vulnerable to all of these vagaries, be able to stand up and trumpet loudly international law, because that's all we have. International law and the full adherence to international law of countries, big or small, is all we have. We need to trumpet that. We can't sit down like the US seismic unit and monitor as we see things unfold. My friends, thank you so much for tuning into this very special edition of Uplift with Sehon Marshall. It's a short one, but I promise you, Thursday coming, we'll have another episode, the regular episode, where we'll go more in depth with a special guest as we discuss the situation in the region. I can't just say Venezuela anymore, because I fully expect expansion of the conflict. So we'll talk more about that on Thursday. Thank you so much for allowing me to share your Sunday evening with you. I wish you a fantastic week. And for those students and parents who are preparing their children for school tomorrow, I wish you all the best as the new term begins. For the students in Kittel's Government School who, I ain't sure if I'm back for the ride yet for Camden Park, but I hope the transportation is sorted out and everything is in place for you to go to Camden Park tomorrow. Until Thursday evening, God's willing, when I'm back with you with the regular program of Uplift with Sehon Marshall, I bid you a good week. Good night.